Today's guest set a world record at 19. She's built a wellness brand from the ground up. She's also lived through the kind of loss that changes everything. Kim Morrison doesn't do anything by halves, and this conversation reflects that. Please note that today's conversation touches on suicide and sexual abuse. If anything discussed raises concerns for you personally, please reach out to Lifeline, Beyond Blue, or someone you trust. This is Through Your Lens, and this is Kim Morrison.
Kim Morrison, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Such a pleasure.
We dive in at the deep end on this show. First question always starts with, well, most of the time, starts with, when was one of the most difficult moments in your life where now when you look back in hindsight, it was maybe a moment of growth or a moment which made you who you are today?
It's a big one. Like there's been a number of those junctions and points in my life that have kind of made you choose which way you want to go. And I think for me, losing Danny's sister to suicide, my husband's sister to suicide, out of the blue and in such a tragic, unbelievable way, sent us as a family into a bit of a spiral, and all of us trying to hold on to the meaning of life and family and our everyday normal was no longer normal. And then what came from that was my husband's experience of it. So for me, I was one step back and trying to hold my little family together and keep everyone strong, putting my own feelings on the side to try and work it out for myself as well. But then we ended up in the middle of all of that deciding to move to Australia. So it was a really big I guess a point in our life that made us question, and we just wanted to get away, just to breathe, to find ourselves again. And we landed here on the Sunshine Coast, and I thought we'd be able to spend a couple of years here and then look at going back. And it was through that time that we then had another massive junction happen where we'd put all our money, we'd bought that all over from New Zealand, and we'd put it all into a thing called Storm Financial, and that collapsed about a few months later. So we got hit with Danny's sister, then we got hit with losing everything we'd worked so hard to build, and that just sent my husband, and he's very open to me sharing this, but it sent him into a very downward spiral. And then our marriage got ruptured, and his emotional and mental health and well-being, like honestly, I could not begin to tell you what, it just felt like a mess. It felt like I was in quicksand. It felt like I was in a mosh pit. It felt like I had no control. And all I could do was bring it right back into myself, hold space for our two children, hold space for him if he was willing to do the healing and the work. And, you know, we met a beautiful woman here on the coast. She was in her late 80s, French, and she was our therapist, and she always said to us, you know, every time you hit a big crossroad or any time you are super challenged, don't make any big decisions. I wasn't even sure if our marriage would stay together. And she said, give it 4 seasons, in her beautiful French accent. And so those 4 seasons, and I've always wondered why she didn't say a year or 12 months or 52 weeks. But
what did she mean by that?
She said the 4 seasons, we're all different, she said, in different seasons of the year. And some of us have more energy in summer and some of us are more energetic or more aligned in winter. And to allow yourself to go through all 4 seasons before you make any big decisions. And I've used that ever since.
So she means literally winter, summer.
Yeah.
The seasons of the year. Yeah, right.
Yeah, but she also feels energetically we go through those seasons ourselves metaphorically. And so to allow yourself the different energy levels and spiritual, I guess, connections we have through those seasons, we worked really hard on holding our marriage and our relationship together. And, you know, when I look back on it, I realized that what I had to go through emotionally and what I had to do to work on myself really gave me a lot of insights into the human experience, so that when I teach or speak or when I'm coaching or counseling, I understand that dark side. I know we all have our own version of what that looks like, and I know we all go through different dark moments. And in fact, I'm yet to meet anyone that isn't challenged by certain things at some point in their life. And it gave me such compassion and empathy to understand that we don't always have the answer. We don't always know what the next breath or moment is going to bring us, but to live in the now. And her line, I'll never forget it. She's no longer with us, but she's always with me. You have to feel it to heal it. And many of us humans will suppress these emotions or just want to get away from it or sabotage ourselves to not have to feel the agony of what those moments are like. But she taught me to lean in and to really embrace it. And her other words were, there's a gift in this. And I kept thinking, what? Where is there possibly a gift? But I look back now and I think the gift was, I just feel I have such a heart for the human experience. And for men, you know, she also felt that men have a tough time in this era now, and some may disagree, and these are her words, not mine, but she felt back in the 50s, maybe even the early 60s, we had very distinct roles. We were the home providers and caregivers. Men were the job hunters or the providers and the protectors. And, you know, with the whole beautiful feminist movement, it's been wonderful on many levels. And I'm so proud of my foremothers for that. But it's also really, in many ways, she felt ruptured where a man stands. And she feels the problem in today's world, this was about 10 years ago, she said this, was that women have, you know, stood up so much now. But she had a belief that women on the front line, women running countries, women in high-powered jobs has actually meant men don't know where they fit anymore. And it's just an interesting thought. I don't know if I agree or disagree, but I find it a really, again, a beautiful way to be curious as to why the world is the way it is. You know, we are such nurturers and we are such wonderful nourishers when you look at the quintessential essence of the feminine energy. And then men are such providers and protectors if you look at that real essence and energy. And so I guess, you know, one minute we want our husbands to be out there hunter-gathering and the next minute we want them changing a nappy or cooking a meal. And so it kind of really made me think. And that all came from that decade and a half of...
Is that how long?
It took us a long time to get through that.
Wow.
You know, for us personally, probably 2 to 3 years to really come back to home base. But we never gave up. And then isn't it interesting that we lost all our money through that process as well? And I often wondered if we'd kept all of that at the time, if I would have asked Danny to leave or he would have left. Whereas we had nowhere to go. We had no family here. We had nothing except each other.
So you've got financial stress, relationship stress and emotional stress all at once. Yeah. Like, how did you survive?
It was definitely getting help and you know, not thinking I had all the answers because I didn't. It was making sure I surrounded myself with people who held me and didn't judge me, because there were people out there going, why are you still together? Why would you, you know, there were people that were very quick to judge and very quick to give their opinion. And look, I understand it was all coming from a place of concern and care, but that's where I sent an email. I look back on it now, within a week or two of our marriage feeling completely ruptured because of Danny's behaviour, being away. And, you know, he went, as I said, he doesn't mind me sharing, but into a world of drugs and alcohol and partying to numb the pain. It was kind of like, what do you do with that? But when I saw his agony and his ruptured heart and his loss, it also made me realise I don't know what it's like to lose a sister to suicide. I don't know what it's like to have been an international cricketer and to have built a beautiful, you know, it wasn't like we were mega wealthy, but we had a beautiful small fortune, and to lose all of that and then to be in a country that we didn't even know if we should be here or go back, or we didn't know where we belonged. And so how we got through it was Jacqueline said, and she goes, you know, and she looked at me and she goes, do you love this man? And I went, oh, yes, so cross with the whole thing. And she looked at him and she said, Danny, do you love this woman? And he goes, absolutely. She goes, well, when there's love, there is no problem.
Yeah.
And that was her. She said, I want you to hear that when there's love, there is no problem. And it still gets me to this day because, you know, the opposing force of love, it's not hate, it's fear. Underneath all of that sits all of these, you know, self-sabotage, hurt, grief, loss, remorse, pain, shame, guilt, all of those things can sit under fear. And so the other thing I've learnt, having been to India a number of times, and I got to spend some time with His Holiness, the 12th Khenting Taisatupa, who is the Tibetan Buddhist educator for all the monks. And I got chosen to have a one-on-one with him. And he sat there with me and he goes, oh, child, what is it? What is it you'd like to ask? And I said, yes, I have a very big question for you. And he goes, what's that? And I said, why do humans have to go through so much pain? Why do we have to experience all of these negative emotions and huge lows that can almost cripple us? And he goes, very human question. And he said, my dear, how can you possibly appreciate love without fear? How can you ever understand light without dark? How would you ever know you were in a high without understanding a low? The dichotomies, the extremes, the polarities of life is what gives us the gifts to live fully and in the moment.
That's amazing, Kim. And when I asked the first question of like your most troublesome, tough moment of your life, I never know where that's going to go, by the way. So like, thank you for sharing and being so vulnerable to share that really tough time in your life. And, you know, I've known you for a short while, but I can see the sun's come back out from the clouds and you live this amazing life and you help others. Why do we have a hard time loving ourselves? You know, like.
If you look at a baby and a child, there's no hate, there's no sabotage. They're just so in the moment. The world evolves around them. So it's a learned behaviour. It's not something I don't believe that we're born with. But again, in order to love ourselves, sometimes we have to really dislike ourselves, and sometimes we have to understand the parts of us that we don't particularly like. And I think it's fair to say that most humans have constraints and weaknesses, but they have strengths and power. And to understand that we are all things and all humans have all traits. We can be awful, we can be bossy, we can be rude, we can be kind, we can be generous, we can be loving. And then I think it comes back to, well, what do you want to be? Who do you want to be? And every day, the moment you wake up, you have a choice. And I know it's not always easy. And I'm not saying you wake up and go, oh, I love myself. Because as humans too, if you say that at high school, well, you're arrogant, you're up yourself. And so to love yourself is almost—
Especially in Australia, probably New
Right.
Zealand too, right?
Yes.
That tall poppy thing.
And
You can't love yourself. You can't say you're great at things.
And that's where I think the Americans, God love them. They're so proud and very patriotic about how brilliant they are. And I do love the way—
You just tone it down a little bit sometimes.
I know, but right, we have to go to the extreme to know that there's some sort of balance. But just that real championing yourself and others. So I think we probably get disappointed in ourselves, just like we do in other people. When we get let down, we let ourselves down. We make mistakes, or are they mistakes or just opportunities to learn? But I think, no one hands you the manual on how to be a successful, hugely compassionate, beautiful, wonderful human. And if you've had parents that have never done work on themselves, or they're just surviving and trying to get through life, and they've had it tough, and we've got to appreciate that there's generations before us that have been through so much. They never had time to go in and see who they were. They were in survival mode, and so sometimes—
Imagine some of this language back then,
Right?
like it didn't exist. Self-love or self-care.
wasn't even—
What's that?
It was survival.
But
and
mind you, they might have been doing it a bit, like going to the pub in the afternoon after, like there's a bit of self-care there, or
well, that's where they found it, I think. And that's where, again, human connection would have probably been their saviour. And, women's groups, there was always things like the red tent. There was always these moments that women, through their cycle, there's always been spiritual and leaders throughout all times. And I think sometimes when we go through our darkest moments, that's when we turn to some sort of spiritual or deeper meaning on life, because otherwise, what is this all for? Why are we here? It's weird.
Now, today you're an entrepreneur, speaker, author, mum. What other titles do we have there? We've got a few.
Crazy,
amazing person, vibrant person. But where did that come from? I'm interested to know who Kim Morrison was, as a 19-year-old. I know you did some amazing things in your teens, but yeah, where did it come from, this drive and this person you are today?
I always think back to, I've got a photo that I have on my phone, and I have it framed in my office and on my bathroom mirror. It's me when I was 4, and I'm in this flower dress because I love flowers and plants, and I've just got this big grin on my face. And, my upbringing, you could say it was tough. Mum had me at 17. My dad was only 20. They came together and married. I was in mum's belly. And so it wasn't, I don't think it was a loving relationship. They fought a lot. They argued a lot. They were both trying to find out who they were, probably gutted that there's this kid. And so I don't know. And this is probably the question that I ask myself often is, are we born this way or do we learn this way? And I feel like it's a mixture, the nature versus nurture. And I do think I came into this world with a glass half full. I do think I've always had rose-tinted glasses, and sometimes that hasn't served me, but I do believe love will always prevail and it will always overcome evil. And I know from the age of 4, when I first started having memories, no matter how bad it was between mum and dad, no matter how much violence I saw around me, no matter how much abuse I endured, if you really want to go deep, I was sexually abused by 3 different men around the age of 9. And so when I look at it, yeah, thank you. It was, I don't recall ever thinking all men were bad or life was awful. I remember feeling very vulnerable and very scared and very unsure, but I always thought I'd get out of it, or I'd always, I don't know, I found ways. And so
Didn't make you angry later on, or you just found a way to move on?
No, I don't. I think, let's be fair here. There was a moment it came out about one of the men who was he was a grandfather, and he was actually the local butcher. Our mum and dad owned a milk bar, or a dairy, we called it back in New Zealand, and he owned the butcher next door. And, I would often be sent over to get the meat for the lunches that our shop was making and all of that, and I hated doing it. But he'd locked the door, and, just there was so many things that occurred. But he also threatened me to cut off my hand with one of those big butcher's knives if I ever told anybody. And so it was very, like, when I look back on it, it's like so dark and so awful and horrific. And but I was so grateful when it came out, because I remember, even though I was scared, I remember my mum saying she knew something was going on. She couldn't pinpoint it. But then my mum's a fighter, and she did not let anything sit. So the minute she found out what had been going on, we went straight to the police. And, we went through a whole court thing. I had to go through all of that. It was very challenging. But my mum made sure that this was found out, because he was a grandfather, and she wasn't sure who else he was doing this to. And, he got done, and he got put away in prison. So there's a part of me that thinks, did I have the grace and the beauty and the ability to realise it was not my fault? And maybe that allowed me to just let it go, because it was done and he was punished, and it was wrong, and it wasn't my fault. Whereas the other 2, they got away with it. But there's many men and women out there, and this is where, I fight so hard for the domestic violence and things like this, because there's many people out there that didn't get a voice, or don't get heard, or don't get believed, or are told, you do not tell this. And so I think for me, there's no anger, maybe because he was punished, and maybe my rose glass tinted glasses and my, I just got on. I just got on. So that young spirited, and when Mum then came in the middle of the night and said to me, "We're leaving your father," I was like, "Oh, thank goodness." And I remember thinking that at 9 or 10. Thank goodness.
Things got so bad, your mum one night said, "Let's
middle of the night." We put everything into this orange clothes basket, was my memory of it, and we left. And
did you know where you're going?
No, I had no idea. I think
Can you remember that
I think
night?
we stayed in a hotel that night.
Yeah.
And then my next memory is, Mum was a single mum and she had 3 kids and we were on to that. And then I became pretty much, I think, her right-hand person. Her, like from the age of 10, 11, I was feeding, cleaning, holding the house because Mum had to work 3 jobs.
So you're looking after 2 younger siblings.
Yeah, and so kind of stepped into that role. And
so you were a motherly figure from a young age.
Yeah. And I think, people would say, "Oh, you lost your childhood," or I remember hearing one therapist said, "It's really unfair." And I'm like, no, it's, no, I am who I am, I'm sure, because I became that rock for my mum. And
have you had a lot of therapy over the years for all these?
Gosh, yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
and would you recommend
totally,
people? Yeah.
Totally.
What are the benefits? Why do it?
Well, you want to process it.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're thinking. And when you understand that a thought creates a belief and a belief creates a behavior and a behavior becomes our habits, that's why I got so interested in the human mind. And that's why I started studying elements of psychology, neuro-linguistic programming. I love hypnotherapy. I did all the study. Danny reckons I've probably spent at least $250,000 on investing in learning about human behavior. I went to America and studied the temperaments, understanding what makes us different, not wrong. I just love it. And I love reading books and I love listening to podcasts and TED Talks and because I'm fascinated.
Do you think trauma lives in the body and stays with us, or do you think these bad things happen and then you choose how you want to look at it and move on?
Oh, no. Trauma lives. I have a belief that the neurological system, our nervous system, we hold that. We hold that trauma. It's proven as a neurological loop. It's a pathway. It's something that becomes a part of us. Now, we can then use it as a tool if we know what it is and what to do with it, or it can become our worst enemy, our weapon. So that's why the process of understanding, we are meaning-making machines. Everything we experience, we make it mean something. You only have to ask a sibling, or if you've been brought up in a home with more than one child, you know that you can remember an experience and one will see it this way and another, and yet it's the same experience. So it's not the experience, it's the meaning we put into the experience, which then leads me down the quantum realm of, is it real? Like, is it really real, or is everything we're doing just a perception of what we think is real? And when you start to understand that, you then can let go of it and then go down the rabbit hole of, well, who am I? Why are we here? What is this all about? Why did that happen? When I look at the experiences, why do some people go through such horrific, hard times and other people seem to move through life? I'm not saying they don't go without their troubles, but it doesn't seem to be as extreme as some people. And one of my gurus in India said, "Oh, darling," he said, "that's you've got to realize we're actually souls having a human experience." And his belief was that anyone you see that has a fairly reasonably easy life, their soul's just taking a break this time round. And the only way we really learn, and my grandmother always said this, we learn most at our worst. She said it this way, and I'll give you an example of a story. She said, we were driving down my grandmother immigrated over here in her late 80s, early 90s. And so I always say to people, if you think you're too old, please. So grandma immigrated over here, and she was this beautiful soul. I was so lucky to have her in my life for so long. Gentle soul, Dorothy May. And she was a baker so I got my love of food, and particularly around baking and being in the kitchen with her. My other grandmother died when I was 9, so that's why 9 was quite a big age for me. But she was the lover of plants and very stoic and strong and tall and elegant, and just that was my memory of her. And so I call on my grandmothers whenever I'm energetically, I'm not sure, and I've got goosebumps now. So whenever I get these goosebumps, I know they're with me.
Yeah.
And my grandmother, Dorothy May, the other one was Myrtle Millicent Rose.
Wow,
And
great
she's
names.
right into her plants, and so I love that.
Yeah.
But Grandma was over here, and she'd come and stay with me for a couple of weeks. She lived out at Kingaroy where my dad was living, and I'd drop her back up to Kingaroy because they'd immigrated over here at that time too. And we're driving down the freeway, and I just sat there, and I was having these horrible thoughts. And she puts her hand on my lap, and she goes, "Penny for your thoughts." She always used to say that, "Penny for your thoughts." And I go, "Oh, Grandma, I can't share this one. It's really bad." And she looked at me and she goes, "No, darling, it's important to share." And so I made sure the children, they were watching little DVD players, and I made sure that they had their headphones on. And I said to her, "Grandma, I just keep having these terrible thoughts. I'm going to have a head-on car accident. And I don't know why they keep coming up. They're in my dreams. They're in my thoughts." And she goes, "Oh, dear, that's not good, is it?" And I said, "No." And she goes, "Oh, no, darling. No, that's just the angels asking you to drive more carefully." And I thought about it, and I thought, yeah, she says we pay attention when something's scary or bad. When it's good, we're just in it. But if you really think about it, the times we wake up or the times we're really jolted into life is through trauma, tragedy, heartache, heartbreak, grief, loss, all of those things, change.
Yeah.
And she had a belief that that's the angels coming in, if you'll listen to them, coming in. She believed we had these guided angels, and they're coming in to ask you. And in that instance, she felt it was just be really aware.
Yeah.
So, and I do. If ever I have a horrible thought, I'm going, what are the angels telling me? Which is such a better reframe than I'm going to go down the mosh pit of my life. And I just read the book, The Secret. That was all out at that time. And so I was like, the law of attraction. Oh, my gosh. But
get this thought out of my head.
And the more I thought about it, the more it stayed there. So, you know, I think the power of a reframe, the power of being curious rather than judgmental, the power of understanding that we do go through challenging times and what is it there to teach us. Even though when you're in the throes of something quite hard, it's very challenging if someone said, "Oh, this is going to be a great opportunity for growth." No, thank you. We don't want to hear that. But it's as we come through it or out the other side, maybe with the right words, the right therapist, the right person could say those words, and that just gives you a little bit of hope. And I think sometimes as humans, hope is one of our greatest allies.
You brought up a word there as well, which is one of my favorite words, and that's being aware and awareness. And you're one of those people where I always meet, and I can tell you are very aware. Like, how is that person feeling right there? If you meet someone new, like some people, is that a gift or is that something you kind of work on just to be more present? Is probably another word. Or you just gifted?
I don't know. I genuinely am interested in people. I'm genuinely humbled to be around people. I'm genuinely blown away you wanted to interview me today. Like every time I stand on stage or I'm invited to speak, or I get so nervous and I get so worried that I won't have anything interesting or powerful to say. And then one of my speech teachers said to me years ago, "Oh, Kim, that's that nervousness, that red rash, that sweat, that they're all signs that you care, it matters." And she said, in fact, the day you stop having that may be the day to stop speaking, which was a great reframe because then I started going, oh, this is good. I care. But I think for anyone that is going to watch or listen to this, that you've been that interested to hear what I've got to say, like I don't take that lightly. I'm very humbled to think that I could be in your presence or in someone's company, or someone wants to learn from me, or my children chose me. You know, if you want to go down a spiritual route, like I always look at them and go, why did you choose me? You know, and it's quite humbling and very liberating at the same time.
But you're someone who you're curious, I guess is probably the best way to sum it up. You're always looking to work on things, improve things. At 19, you ran the youngest person in the world in New Zealand
at the time
to run 100 miles in a 24-hour window. Is that right?
Yes.
Why did you do that?
I was dead. I was dead. Look, you know, like there's this part of me that's very quiet and very observant and very aware, I guess, of I'm interested, aware of why things happen, how things work. And when I moved from Auckland to Melbourne, I decided to go on my big OE, my overseas experience, like most Aussies and Kiwis. Got to Melbourne and I was working in a gymnasium. I was a qualified personal trainer. I didn't make it in netball. So I was very competitive at school. I loved sport. I was house captain. I loved leadership roles because I felt like being a leader made me step up, or if I was captain, I had to do better so that I could help. So I was always like, what can I do to do better? And then I didn't make it from the age of 13, 14, I wanted to be a New Zealand silver fern. And I grew too short. I didn't make it, but I got to state level. And I was really proud of that. But when I knew I wasn't going to go on, that's kind of like gave me permission to then go on my OE. So I got to Melbourne, working in a gymnasium as a PT. Right next door to that college was a natural therapies college, or next to that gym was that college. And I remember seeing on the outside of this college, which was, again, I was curious, it was a 10-week aromatherapy and massage course. I had $180 in my bank account and this was $160. And so I walked in and I was greeted with the smell, and I'll never forget that smell, and it smelled beautiful, and I signed up. And that 10 weeks became nearly 4 years of study, and I think I learned there that the more I learned, the more I realised I didn't know.
Yeah.
But during that, to get my sports therapy, sports nutrition and understanding the psychology of sport, I had to get up 200 community hours. So the quickest way to do that, I thought, would be, and I'd heard about these ultra runs, so I went to this ultra marathon in Coburg, and I got assigned to a guy called Cliff Young, and he won the inaugural Sydney to Melbourne race, 1,015 kilometres in his 60s. He was known as the shuffler, Cliffy in his gumboots, the sheep farmer, and all of that.
Is he he's the farmer from
Colac or Coburg, but we were in Coburg.
Yes,
but I think he was from Colac.
Yes, he's famous for just kept going.
He's
and
like the Forrest Gump of our time, right?
Yeah.
And anyway, so I was assigned to Cliffy. I'd heard about him, I knew about him, and then I'm there at this 24-hour race watching 40 athletes run around a 400-metre track, and it was so boring.
I was just around a track.
Oh yeah, it was around a 400-metre track, and we had a pit stop tent, and we'd massage Cliffy, and we'd feed him, and we'd, change his shoes, or we'd help him, and then he'd get back out on the track. And any injuries were looked at by the sports med team or whatever. We'd all do that. So it was like a pit stop tent, literally, for all the athletes. Yeah. And in the middle of the night, it was cold. It was a bit wet from memory. And he came in, and I looked at him, and I just thought, I can't wait for this to be over. And he goes, what do you think? And I went, I was honest. I said, this is the most stupid thing I've ever been to in my entire life. And he goes, oh, yeah, but it's pretty powerful. I went, powerful for what? And he goes, well, why don't you run one? And I thought, well, I'd rather run one than watch one. And so I literally walked to the lap scoring tent, and I said, when's the next ultra? And they said it was in about 3 or 4 weeks' time. It was a 12-hour race. I thought, cool. So I signed up. Don't know why. But I think it was my competitive nature, and I'd rather be on the track than watching it. So there was something about that. Anyway, so I signed up, and 3 or 4 weeks later, I'm on a 400-metre track with about 30 or 40 athletes, and Cliffy came up to me and he said, just got one thing to say to you, Kimmy. It's 90% mental and 10% physical. I went, yep, got that. Knew everything at 19. And so we headed out, and 4 hours into the race, I had bleeding nipples. I didn't realise that the plasters they weren't a fashion accessory. They were a necessity. I had blisters all over my feet. I'd run through the marathon. By the way, I'd never run more than 10 Ks in my life.
And you had 3 weeks of training.
I did a few runs. I just thought the minute he'd said to me it was all mental, I figured, oh, well.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Perfect.
And so he reminded me again at the start, it's 90% mental, 10% physical. I was like, yeah, got this. And, of course, remember I was studying aromatherapy, so I had my oils and I had my little crew and all of that. Well, 4 hours into the race, I then realised I'm only a third of the way in, and that's when this voice appeared in my head of, what are you doing? This is stupid. What a dumb thing to do. And then I noticed my knee hurt, and then I'd get through that and my right shoulder would hurt. Or I quit. I wanted to quit so many times, but then I had another guy who became my coach say, well, do you want DNF next to your name? And that did not finish. And no, I'm highly competitive. I did not want that next to me. Yeah. And so I kept going, kept pushing, and just
Are you able to talk to people as you like you cruise there?
Could walk with
and
you.
so like, someone's going, do you want DNF next year?
Yeah.
Or
and I'm going, no.
Okay, keep going.
And he goes, well, keep going. One foot in front of the other. I'm like, okay. And so I just did as I was told. And then at the very end of that race, the lap, one of the crew will follow you around with a sandbag. And when the gong goes off, they drop the sandbag and then they measure that last lap. They total up all your laps. They announced the third place getter, the second place getter, and then they announced me that I'd won and I'd run 95.4 Ks. So I hobbled up to get my trophy. And as they gave me my trophy, they said, you know, you've just won this 12-hour race. This has given you entrance into the Victorian 24-hour championships. Everyone's clapping. And inside I'm thinking, I got to do that all over again, twice as long. But then there was another part of me was like, another challenge.
Yeah.
And so I trained more. We did like 50K training runs down at Wilson's Promontory. I got to train with some of the top athletes and up in the Dandenongs. And I don't know. I just really enjoyed the fact that I had something to aim towards or to challenge myself with. And so a few months later, we were lined up on a 400-metre track down in Victoria. And again, Cliffy came up to me and said, remember, it's all up here. He was in the race as well. And then he tapped his heart and said, you know, have you got this? And I went, yep. And then he said, one other thing. The race is not always to the swift, but to those that keep on running. And I looked at him and he goes, you don't have to finish first, but just don't give up. And I thought, because I wanted to finish first. And then the Victorian champion was in the race as well, a lady called Sandra Kerr. And she was 41 and I was 20 or coming up 21. And so anyway, we headed off in the race. Now, the most exciting thing that happens in a 400-metre track race is every 6 hours we change direction. So it's very boring. Anyway.
Exciting. Get to go the other way now, guys.
But it's weird because you are alone with your own thoughts. And Cliffy, another thing he said to me is you'll meet the real you. I didn't know what that meant at the time, but sure enough, they call it the graveyard shift from midnight to 6 a.m. It's dark. It's cold. It's how I felt in the pit stop tent for Cliffy. Like, what are we doing here? This is so dumb. And my aromatherapy teachers had been there. They'd created this blend for me and my team. And look, I went through so many. There's a whole story. I do a keynote on this particular talk, but there was all ups and downs. I quit 4 times. I hid in a toilet. I wanted to be off the track. And then at one point, the race director weighed me and I'd lost nearly 7 kilos. And he said, I'm sorry, Kim, I have to take you out of the race. And it's so weird. This is why I'm so interested in the human mind. The minute he told me I couldn't run, I told him I had to. And I didn't want to be pulled out of the race. And so there was this moment of don't tell me what to do. Yeah. And I said, well, what do I have to do to stay in the race? And he said, listen to your crew. Your crew know better than you. And this is when I started to realize, you know, so many times in life, particularly when we're at our most vulnerable, that's when you do need a crew. That's when you do need people who know more than you, people that can make better decisions for you or help you make better decisions because you're not in an emotional or physical state to make the best decisions for you. And so running really did become a metaphor for life for me. Everything I did in my runs became, well, and even now when I go out for a run and I think, and it's hurting, I go, if I can just do 3 more lampposts, then in 3 more lampposts, see how you feel. And so I'm always doing this, I'm bartering all the time with myself. But I love it because we're often doing that in jobs or in relationships or in parenting. So anyway, that race and I was using my oils, I was eating what I was told to eat, drinking what I was told to drink. And as the sun started coming up, all crowds started building and we had 2 or 3 hours to go of the race. And that's when Melissa, one of my crew, came up to me. She was doing all the documenting and all of that. She came up and she said, you could win this, but Sandra Kerr's on your tail. And that's all I needed to hear. And apparently—
Do you know where you are? You don't know. Yeah.
I mean, you can ask, but I'm better off not knowing.
Yeah, sure.
I didn't want to know, except at that point. When she said that, she said, you could win this, but Sandra Kerr is gaining on you.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't know what happened, but apparently I ran more in the last 2 hours of that race than I ran in the first 2 hours. And this is again where I felt metaphorically, we think we're done, but there's so much more to a human being than what we see or feel or think. And so where did I find that? And where do you know where that extra spirit is? And I think since listening to people, like I got to go and listen to David Goggins, read all his books, and man, that guy's another whole level of how to displace pain and how to run through stuff. And he's just a machine. But I always had the belief that when you think you're done, you've only actually hit 80% capacity max. You've still got 20 more. His belief is when you think you're done, you've only hit 40. You still got 60. That was a massive reframe for me now in my later years, because now I go, I'm so tired. No, I've still got 60.
Yeah.
So it's like, again, the reframe. I love the reframe.
And you've used that all. Did that help, later in life when you had those troubling moments?
Well, I only heard that with Goggins only a few years ago. But then, through COVID and all that time, I kept thinking, we got more. There's more to give. There's more to do. And so, at the end of that race, all my team were there. My aromatherapy teachers were there. My, friends were there, and everyone was cheering, and it feels really good. And, I was about 9 or 10 kilos lighter than I am now. So it's not a very healthy sport.
Yeah. How are the knees holding up today?
Not so good. I paid for it. But anyway, they ended up telling me that Sandra Kerr got second. Well, she was announced the second place getter, and then I was named first place getter. And when they gave me that trophy, they said, and by the way, you've set a world record for being the youngest female to run 100 miles in less than 24 hours.
How did that feel?
That blew me away. That just
world record holder.
Yeah, well, it was an unofficial world record because they didn't have the Guinness Book of World Records there, but apparently at the time that's what it was. And then they gave me my trophy and they said, and because of that, you've won a place to represent Australia at the World Indoor 24-Hour Championships in London. And I guess for me, when I look back on that, I go, isn't it interesting? At 15, all I wanted to do was represent New Zealand in netball. So I had that big goal and I worked hard towards it. But then it showed me again in life that it's great to have goals, but being adaptable and flexible and mindful, that I would never have known. I would have ended up running for Australia and setting a world record. And then when I got to England, and I was the only female selected, and Cliffy again was with me, I was running for Australia, even though a Kiwi, but I was really proud of that. And in my head, I was running for Australasia. But at the 12-hour mark, the race directors there decided to try and make it a bit more of a spectator sport, and they put it at Milton Keynes Shopping Centre, and that was a marble floor. And at the 12-hour mark, I had set 8 Australian indoor records, but my knees were out the size of my quads. I was really unwell. It claimed 3 runners who never ran again. A marble floor was ridiculous to run those kind of distances and
slipping
that hard.
Slipping and sliding everywhere.
Wasn't the slipping and sliding, it was the pounding on a really hard floor. Our shoes weren't like what they are today. We were in, I don't know what I was running in. I can't even tell you what I was running in back then. But it wasn't what it is today.
Yeah.
And so anyway, Cliffy and I, he also was quite hurt. And we decided we didn't want a DNF next to our names. So I got to walk with that man. He said, let's not run for Australia or New Zealand. Why don't we walk for world peace? And again, I think I just have such a heart and a desire to make the world a better place, to hope that we can all get along. I know it's fantasizing and I know it's big visions and I know it's potentially ridiculous, particularly in the times we're in now. But I also know that from Jacqueline, when there's love, there is no problem. And I do believe that some of us were just put here to remind people to love themselves and to love others. And so I did. I got to walk with him for 12 hours.
Amazing. You've created a whole life and business around loving yourself and loving others and making sure other people are looking after themselves. Tell me what 28 is and where that seed was planted. Obviously, you got into aromatherapy at a young age, but why did you decide to go, yep, this is what I want to do and make a business out of?
Well, after my running days, and behind all of that was a man that I'd fallen in love with.
Who was this man?
This man was Danny Morrison, and I met him in Perth when I was 18. I won a trip to Perth. I was working in travel at the time after I left school, and I really wanted to go to Perth with my girlfriend whose sister lived there. And to win this trip, we had to sell X amount of Contiki tours. And so we used, honestly, it's so, when I look back, I said to Lizzie, that's out. We're winning that. And we did.
Nice.
we won this trip to Perth, and she said, I've got this friend that's, he's playing for New Zealand, cricket for New Zealand. He's got tickets for us to go this, I don't know if it was a day night or a one day, I can't remember. And I'm thinking, cricket, schmicket. Anyway, we got there and we went to the Wacker. I was so embarrassed, 2 blondes, and we were down to the dressing room at halftime, and we're standing outside the New Zealand cricket dressing room, and I'm thinking, this is the most, I felt like a groupie. I felt like such a bimbo and just shouldn't be here. Anyway, he walked out, hugged Lizzie, and then he turned around and she goes, this is my friend Cam, and he hugged me, and I remember the smell, I remember the feeling, I remember looking at him thinking he's hot, and then I remember looking at Lizzie going, I like cricket. Anyway,
nice smell or sweaty smell?
It was that, I don't know. Well, we all, since then, I've obviously studied this, but we let off pheromones. We all have natural pheromones. And if you want to, I can come back to that, my belief around divorce rates and all of that. But being a marriage celebrant, I'm really big on understanding love and really dive down that rabbit hole of why we smell certain ways. But anyway, he smelt divine, and it wasn't.
So you didn't see him first, you smelt him first.
I saw him, thought he was hot, and then he hugged me. I thought, it was kind of like, it was a bit of a sweaty kind of, I don't know, it was just this masculine, I don't know, I just remember it was a very sporty smell. Anyway, and that's also what, really interested me in aromatherapy. I was more interested in the power of smell and then what oils became. So having met him, then I ended up travelling with him in the New Zealand cricket team for 3 weeks. He invited me back for the Boxing Day Test match in 1987. Then at the end of that tour, that's when I decided to stay in Melbourne, and he went back to New Zealand. So we actually went our separate ways for nearly 3.5, 4 years. I knew he wasn't ready for me, even though I knew he was the one I wanted to have babies with.
You knew straight away?
I knew. I told Lizzie on the plane going home from Perth,
Yep.
he's the one I'm going to marry and have babies with. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind, but I knew it was. I just knew he'd be it. Didn't know how it was going to happen. Anyway, we went our separate ways. Now, those are in the days, Tom, where we wrote letters to each other. There was no, FaceTiming or Zoom calls.
Simpler times.
It was way simpler. But it would mean that we'd write a letter. By the time I got it to the post office and then it got to New Zealand, he would then get it, and then he would be on a tour somewhere maybe. It could be months before I heard from him again. And so we both ended up in other relationships, and that's when I got into my running. And that's where he just kept building his career playing cricket for New Zealand. So I was always watching on the TV where New Zealand was playing.
Yep.
And then that 4 year later, he came
with your
back.
partner at the time. You're like, I know that guy.
I did. I actually told him I'm in love with a cricketer, and he kept telling me I'd get over it, but I didn't. And so when Danny came back to Australia touring with New Zealand again, that's when I knew I just had to get out of this relationship. He was the one. Well, actually, Danny asked me to come back to New Zealand. Okay. And so I had one more race to do for Australia, and I also wanted to complete my aromatherapy diploma, which was finally finishing on the 14th of February, Valentine's Day that year. And so did all of that, and then I did go back to New Zealand, and we got engaged at the end of that year in 91. So it was all the right reasons. The reason I bring that up is because the women that I'd studied aromatherapy through, we'd stayed in touch as well. And then they were looking for people to be their international presenters and their speakers for their brand, which was ahead of its time at the time. And even though my greatest fear was public speaking, they asked me to come back to Melbourne to train. And so I went over and did the training. And then out of those 40 or 50 women, they selected me and another woman, Pat, to be their international presenters. So I was only 24, 25 at the time. And I was so nervous, but they then trained me. That's where I got all my speech training. They were trained by Tony Robbins. So that's where I started to learn the power of NLP. That's why I then studied NLP in my mid-20s, and then became very fascinated in the human mind and how to get over feeling so nervous. And I just, even though I didn't want to do it, I kept pushing myself outside that comfort zone and getting on stage and pushing.
People out there just hitting pause on that moment, who might want to speak in front of people, and what do you say to them like that moment before they get on stage? Are there any tricks or tips there to?
Oh, it's breath. It's all about breath. And then I use oils, of course. I'm lucky.
Yeah.
So I'll drop a sandalwood on my tummy. I'll drop a rose on my heart, and then I just take 3 deep breaths. And then I say, you're about to go on stage and speak to a whole lot of people who know nothing about you, but they're giving you the grace of time. Give them your best. And so then I walk out on stage, still nervous, mouth dries. If people that know me will know that I start doing that a little bit, but, it goes eventually once I soften into it. And people that also know me will see if I'm really nervous, you'll see my hand on my stomach. It's to remind me to anchor into my gut, not speak from here. So they gave me all these wonderful tools and oils to work with to be the best.
I remember seeing you speak at Cindy O'Meara's an opening for changing habits or something like that.
Yes.
It was many years ago.
Yes.
But you spoke wonderfully, amazing. You just owned it on stage, and I must have been taking photos and you came on. I'm like, you're amazing. Like, how do you do that? Like, and you were just so calm and there was no nervousness at all. And you said something that's always stayed with me. Like, you have to say things on stage which will appeal to different people. And so you said something around numbers and facts for those facts people, and then something like storytelling for those people. And I was like, oh, yeah, you do. You have to sort of drop those little bits and pieces for the different people. Anyway, I always remember that.
Well, that's where I studied the temperaments to understand that we're all different, not wrong, which is based off Hippocrates' work of the sanguine, choleric, phlegmatic and melancholic. And then
there's a lot of big words there.
That's a whole lot of words, but that was something I became really interested in, not to box people in or to label them, but again, just another vehicle, one way of understanding. Myers-Briggs came off that, DISC came off that. So
speak their language.
All these, talk to people, or they say seek to understand before you're understood. So even though I might be a different type to you, how do you talk? So and then from an NLP point of view, that's how we build rapport and reciprocity and understanding that I don't have to get my point across. I love listening to people. I love hearing their stories. I love understanding them. And then if they ask me a question, then I like to think about, what do you want to hear and how would I say this? And so yes, I do. I talk to the direct people that want facts, results and information. I talk to the playfuls, the sanguines who love stories and metaphors and big pictures. I talk to the what we call the peacefuls, which are the phlegmatics, they're just very nurturing, they're wholesome, they're quite quiet. So sometimes I'll go really quiet for them, or I'll ask everyone to take a breath, and then I'll talk to the precise or the melancholics who are they want to know the facts, the information, the science. And so I'll try and bring all four of those elements into that. And so all of this is, I guess, I haven't done a degree, which has been a story I've told myself for years, that because I don't have a degree, I'm not good enough or I don't know enough. And it was a story I had to really work on, because this day and age really reveres people with academic qualifications. And yet, again, COVID taught me that you could have highly academic professors professing one story or belief or angle, and then highly academic professors and very well-informed people professing a completely opposite view. So then it came down to, again, it wasn't about how much we knew, it was based on our belief. And what we believed, what we valued, depended on which side we'd sit on and how we would value that. And COVID was also a very challenging time for a lot of people, because I counseled a lot of people through that whose families broke up, relationships broke up, because someone had a strong value and belief that it was important we followed what was suggested, and they felt something different. And so I felt very sort of sad and sorry that this happened, but also excited because it highlighted how different we are, and that now you can see it coming out even more, that it really was, people are apologizing for their beliefs or what they made people do or not do. And again, I don't have a view on it, because quite frankly, when I looked at it, didn't matter which side of the equation you sat on, ultimately both sides wanted to be safe and both wanted to be healthy. So we actually all want the same thing. You can look at that from governments. We all want the same thing. You can look at it from masculine, feminine. We all want the same thing. And so that's why I go, we go to war over one side, yet we all want the same thing. And, religious beliefs, again, I don't want to knock any of them. They're all powerful in their own way, I think. But why is a Buddhist wrong to a Christian, or why is Judaism wrong to a Hindu? To me, I go, and that's why when I did my naming ceremonies for my children, I had 7 candles to honour all belief systems, and I lit all 7 of them to honour them all, because I think at the heart of all of them is love and peace and harmony and growth and connection, and to love and be loved. And I don't know, I don't know. It might be a little bit Pollyanna. I get told sometimes I'm a Pollyanna, but I don't mind if,
What's a polyam?
just thinks the good in everything.
Well, anyone who's around you is lucky to be around you because you do throw that off to the world, which is amazing.
No.
It's like a big hug whenever you're around.
Yeah, I love that. My children said to me one day, I said to them, if Mum died, and I was being really pragmatic one day driving in the car with them. They were both, I don't know, 8 or 9. Now, look, things happen, but if Mummy all of a sudden was gone, how would you remember me? And they both looked at each other in the back seat and they went, be kind. I thought, yeah.
Great.
I won. You can put that on my tombstone.
We've gone all over the place today and you've been incredible. And I know you're a busy lady, so you've got lots of things to do. But a few more questions because I'm loving all of this.
Oh, my gosh, I didn't even answer about 28, my business.
Well, let's go 28 and you're talking about your daughter. You now work with her. She's part of the business. What's that like? Tell me a bit about 28 first so the people out there know all about what we're talking about when we say 28 and working with your daughter.
Well, I guess I went to the story of telling about Danny because we did marry and then 5 years later at the end of his career, we did have children. I did have his babies. And it's funny, whenever I talk to women that have children, I found that you have an energy in your 20s, 30s and maybe even 40s that's, you want to conquer the world. I feel like you've got all this, you've got the power of estrogen and testosterone in behind you. And, that the beauty of being young is you have energy. And so I had energy to not only be a mum, but I wanted to have a business or something to put all of this knowledge. And I was still working for the company running their workshops nationally and internationally in Australia and New Zealand and Singapore. And so I loved it so much that when they stepped away from the business, I just knew I wanted to have a business like that. So I created a business at the time. First of all, I said to my girlfriend, who we had babies at the same time, Fleur, she was so beautiful. She was a beauty therapist. And I guess at the time, my main modality was aromatherapy. And I said to her, I was asked to write an article for a magazine. And I said to her, I know what it is we have to do. We had 2 young children each. She goes, what? And I said, we've got to write a book. And she goes, oh, okay. And so, which all good friends do. Yeah. And so we pitched this idea to a publishing house and they turned us down. We were horrified. I couldn't believe they turned us down.
How did they?
And we linked arms and walked out of there. And I said, well, if Harry Potter got turned down 9 times, we've got 8 to go. Yeah. So again, competitive, I think. It's just like, don't say a no doesn't mean no. It just means yes, not yet. Yeah. And so we went to the next publisher and that one, we pitched it slightly differently and they signed us on the spot and gave us a $3,000 check. I actually couldn't believe it. Within a week, we had $3,000, which back then felt a lot of money. Yeah. So then we wrote our first book. And there's another whole story in that. I won't go into it, but we wrote our first book and we called it Like Chocolate for Women, because there's a story behind it. But anyway, it was just about the power of daily rituals. Busy women, busy mums. How do we look after ourselves going through the toughest times? When I say toughest, it can be our children could be unwell or we're sleep deprived or
just having young children.
Just exhausted by their energy and all the things they do. And so I just said to her, let's turn this into a business. And so then we had this is when online started. And so we created this online shop. We spent a fortune creating this online shop with all our favorite products that would help women. And we were very interested at the time too of low tox products, understanding what things did on our skin, what we ate.
This is very ahead of the time. What year are we talking here?
We're talking, in the early 90s I got interested in all of this because Danny was an athlete. And so I wanted to give him the best. Yeah. His body was our income. Yeah. So I looked at his body as a vehicle we had to give it the best. We had to look after it. That's why I loved massaging him, using oils, giving him the right nutrition. I studied all these modalities to make sure that vehicle stayed on the park as long as it could.
Lucky man.
Yeah, he loved it.
Being looked after.
Yeah, well, I took the mass. I was interested and I wanted him to succeed. And for him to succeed meant we succeeded. And I also, at that time, was working with a psychologist and we started writing a book called The Other Half, which unfortunately we lost on a hard drive that got deleted and we lost the whole book. But anyway, it took us down this beautiful pathway. I was interviewing all these partners of elite athletes, got all their stories, and it was so cool because then I thought if I had a guide for all these professional athletes, male or female, what the role we play as the other half.
That's a great idea. Has that been done yet?
No. It as soon as it got lost on that hard drive, I thought, oh, well, not meant to be.
Still time.
Yeah, maybe. Anyway, so it was during that time that I got really interested in what it meant to be around chemicals, our food, our products we put into and onto our body. And I just got, and then of course being pregnant, there was no way I was going to put anything that I felt didn't align with my values. So you're right. Like a lot of people talk about it now, but back then we were seen a bit hippie, clippy, happy clappy. So, and beautiful. And Dan, being a top sportsman in New Zealand, people would send us so many beautiful gifts, but there were products that I would never put near my baby. And so I felt a bit bad. I always said thank you, but then didn't even want to give them to the Salvation Army because I didn't want anyone to have them. So a lot of those products ended up
You're
in the
well
bin.
ahead of it. Even sports nutrition and things like that.
Loved it.
People having Red Bulls and
Oh
Cokes
my
and things
God.
like now. Right?
Danny's,
Might be
his water
sponsorship
back
thing.
then was coconut water. Like I saw all the electrolytes in coconut water. I understood the power of it. Even Cliffy was big on that. He was big on, eating real food when you're running. Look, I learnt about gels when after I had babies, and I hate them. I hate them, which is also why I created another business, which is another business. I've got Blackcurrant Performance because I saw the beauty in real food and supplementing with that and chia seeds and lemon juice and honey. Like there's your gel.
Yeah.
That's a cool gel.
Yeah. Doesn't have to go to a factory and be tinkered with.
No. So anyway,
Sorry.
28. So we had that business. Then, of course, we lost Danny's sister, and that was the rupture that then brought us over here. When we came here, then my gorgeous friend Fleur, a year later, she moved here, and that's when we decided to put all 3 books we'd written at that point into one book, self-publish it, and here on the Sunshine Coast, we launched Like Chocolate for Women in a whole new version. Then from there, at the same time, no accidents, a beautiful Kiwi woman had picked up one of our books about face at Auckland International Airport, read it from Auckland to Perth. She got in touch with me out of the blue. She had a beautiful, more natural and gorgeous skincare range and said she was looking, could she help us or could she work with us? And oh my gosh, it took me 10 years to find someone to create a skincare range with the ingredients I wanted in it. We flew to Perth, and it was while we were in Perth meeting with her about the products and the oils that we wanted to have that I said to Fleur, I feel like the name of our company should be 28 because I was born on the 28th. She was born on the 26th, so that 2 and 6 had an 8.
Yep.
28, when we looked at the natural rhythms and biorhythms of life, we're governed by 28-day cycles.
Yep.
The woman's cycle is 28 days. Takes 28 days to create new neurochemical loop pathways around psychology and habits. And I was just so enthralled with the number 28. And so we slept on it, and the next day we woke up, booked 28.com on the websites, and the lady, we wanted to see what the weather was doing in Fremantle, turned on the news and she goes, no, Joe, oh my goodness, it's the 28th of the 8th, 2008. What a fantastic date. And I just looked at Fleur and went, that's the name of our brand.
There we go.
And so 28.com was born, and we launched our skincare 3 months later, just a very simple range, busy women. We wanted something that really spoke to busy mothers, busy women. By this stage, our children were now in their tween stage. So that's why we rewrote Like Chocolate for Women, because they were babies when we did the first edition. And now they were tweens. And then, life happened. Fleur's marriage broke up and she ended up moving back to New Zealand. So I took over 28. And through that journey, the last 17 years, I've had a couple of different amazing business partners who have taught me so much. And I look back on all those learnings with such gratitude. Wasn't always easy, and, lost friendships through that. Business isn't always easy and bloody tough, actually, and lost money through that and all sorts of things, but hung in there. And I said to Taylor and Jacob one day when they were around that 10, 12 age, maybe one day you'll end up working with me at 28. Maybe this could be our legacy.
Yeah.
Well, at the beginning of last year, my daughter, who's, she's coming up 28, she said, I've got the 3-year itch. I mean, we used to have a 7-year itch. Now it's 3 years. That's how fast the world's rolling. She goes, I think I want to do something else. I said, well, I'm looking for someone. Do you want to come play with me?
Yeah.
And she just went, absolutely. And so in that 3 or 4 month period, we bought 28 back to the Sunshine Coast because we'd had it in New Zealand. And it had gone through a tough time because of COVID. Like we had to pivot, change. I created online programs. My speaking had stopped because couldn't get out there on stages anymore. And so we just kept twisting, turning, pivoting and playing. And I created an online program called the Self-Love and Wellness Mentorship Program. It's only going to go for a year. It's now in its 6th year.
Amazing.
Created leadership programs, created the Essential Self-Mastery Program, which was using, rather than having to go and study NLP or hypnotherapy or cognitive behavioral therapy or all of these things, I thought, what are all the parts of it I love the most? And so I made this program, the Essential Self-Mastery Program, a 15-week program of everything I love, and included all the oils and how they affect the mind, the way we think and feel, how to use them physically. Freaking love it. It's
Who's
one
it
of my
for?
favourite.
Who are the type of people out there who,
I
what
guess
are they going through and who does it help?
curious people that have gone through tough times, people that want to be amazing parents, people who want to give their tools and their knowledge and their wisdom to their kids without having to do it for them or beat them with a whip to get them to do it. And I've always said, I don't want to be behind my kids pushing them. I don't want to be in front of them pulling them. I want to walk this life beside them. And they're teaching me as much as I'm teaching them. So how can we do this in a way where I grow up with my kids?
Yeah.
And
What's it like working side by side now?
It's the best. It's the best. I mean, they've seen Danny and I at our worst through that whole transition period. They went through a tough time and they had their own traumas through that experience. But again,
You've got a son and a daughter.
Yeah. So Taylor, who she's 20, coming out 28, Jake's coming out 27. She was a dancer, a professional dancer and ballerina. COVID put a stop to that. She was in Germany and got called back. Jacob, professional rugby player, amazing rugby player, didn't follow in cricket, but, he got, had things happen and occur for him that didn't quite work out the way he wanted, even though he got a taste of it. So he's now in real estate and could not be more proud because what's happened, and I guess the best example would be Taylor wrote our first or second EDM that went out, and I messaged her and went, what the hell? That was amazing. She goes, I think you've forgotten I grew up with this. And I thought, oh yeah, she's a part of me. I'm a part of her. Like, oh my gosh, she's brought so much energy and freshness and new eyes and sassiness and all the things I potentially would have loved more of. And then Jacob's in the back with blackcurrant and Taylor's fiance, Sam, he's a part of, I love young people. I've always loved teenagers and always loved watching, even though it was challenging at times, and I'm sure they wanted to throttle me as much as I wanted to throttle them. I always remember looking at teenagers thinking, of course they have to break the umbilical cord. Of course they're going to challenge everything I say. They're finding out who they are. So they often will do the opposite of what we want them to do. But if we can just appreciate as parents that that's normal, so otherwise they'd still be living with us. They're still with us. So, and it's great to allow them to become these beautiful individuals that have their own set of rules and values and belief systems. And they do come back to some of the models that you've taught them. And so for me, being a mum now of young adults and watching them in business and watching them thrive, Tom, it's a privilege. It's one of my, like if I got taken out tomorrow, I could happily say to you, done my job.
Yeah.
I've made them better humans than me.
How special.
And it's a real privilege and an honour to have them in my corner with Danny and the four of us and now Sammy as well, the five of us, being so driven to support people to live their best life. That's ultimately what I do. So my programs are for people who want to live their best life.
What are some practical tips, routines for people who are struggling right now? Are there any little tidbits you can share of how you start your day, how you end your day?
If we can appreciate that the nervous system is the barometer. So when we're feeling stressed, and if we understand stress is related to 90% of all illness and disease, then our nervous system is our superpower. So if we're waking up stressed from too much light, not getting enough sunshine, not getting outside, grounding ourselves, not breathing properly, screens, emails, like, look, it is part of the modern world, but to recalibrate, to understand that breath work. And when I say breath work, you don't have to go to a big retreat and do Wim Hof, and they're powerful, but to me it's like just 3 deep breaths. Hand on your stomach, hand on heart. I'm doing the best I can. I'm an amazing mum. I'm a great speaker, I try to say to myself. I'm a fantastic businesswoman. I'm a great wife. I'm a I remind myself of my brilliance.
Are you consistent with that?
Yes,
Have you done that
every
already?
morning. I have a ritual. I've done this every day since I was 18. Every morning I do what I call the body boost ritual, where I use 3 drops of an essential oil, a teaspoon of carrier oil, magnesium oil, and after I've had my morning shower, after my gym, my breath work, my walk on the beach, whatever it is I do, I then massage myself all over with a teaspoon of oil, honouring every part of my body, being grateful for all the wrinkles, all the wobbly bits, that housed babies, that fed babies. They may not all look like they did in their 20s, but I'm so grateful for this body, because we all know you can have 1,000 problems, but the minute you have a health problem, you've only got one. And so to me, health is your greatest asset. And that was a line Danny always said when he was playing cricket. His other line was, everything's subject to change. You don't know if you're going to get called in the team. You don't know if you're going to have a job tomorrow. You don't know who's going to call out your name and select you. So we live by those 2 principles. Health is your greatest asset and life is always subject to change. So be ready for the change. Arm yourself when you're feeling good. Keep doing it. Notice it. Be aware of it. And then if life hurts or it's down, you should have tools in your repertoire. So for me, oils are my superpower. That body boost ritual every morning, never missed a day since I was 18, ever.
Favorite essential oil? Do you use the same one every day? Or?
No, change them, because we're not the same person every day. So that's why I have different blends and different ingredients. So I'm always asking, what do I want more of today? Not what do I want to fix, but what do I want more of? So if I am low on energy, I need more lime. I need more black pepper. I need more peppermint, like oils that will lift me. Or I'll go for my energy and vitality blend. Or if I'm really anxious and feeling a bit nervous about everything I've got to get done, I'll go for marjoram, lavender, Roman chamomile, orange, and then I'll make a blend with that. Or I reach for instant calm. So that's why I've made blends, to make the choices easy. So then I do that ritual. I've got an aroma mist every day at my desk. I have them in my desk. I have them in the kitchen. I have them in the bathroom. Every time I walk past, I spritz myself and do 3 deep breaths. The other thing I'm always grateful for, I'm always about recalibration, is what you're grateful for. So every night, Danny and I will text each other wherever he is in the world, or we'll say to each other, what are the 3 things you're most grateful for today? It doesn't happen every day, that one, but I'll always say it to myself when I get into bed. What am I most grateful for today? And even on my hardest days, I'll be grateful that I'm still breathing. I'll be grateful that I'm connected to you, Mother Earth. I'll be grateful for Father Sky. I'll be grateful for my friends. I'm grateful for the fact that I've got a roof over my head. I'm grateful that I'm breathing. I'm grateful that I have this bed. I'm grateful for my pussycat. There is so much to be grateful for, even through the throes of challenges. Or I will say, when I'm having a tough day and I'm body boosting, at the end when I say something I'm grateful for, I'll say, God, please give me the gift, give me the grace, courage, strength and dignity to get through this. And so I call on those angels Grandma talks about, and I'll say, please guide me, please help me. And then I will use my oils and my diffuser. Every day I light a diffuser. I eat as well as I can. I will choose things from my markets. I love supporting local farmers more so than the big conglomerates. I do have to go to the big conglomerates sometimes, but I get in and out of there as quick as I can, and I get to my local markets. I love supporting local business. I love helping people that want to give more and do more and be more. And these rituals, and even my routines, like having a shower. Most of us will have a shower every day. Turn it into a ritual. So put a couple of drops of your favourite oil on a flannel, place it over the bottom of the shower, and do your deep breathing in the shower, and you've turned that into a beautiful ritual. So I'm all about turning routines into rituals. Even when I'm putting the kids, still to this day, my children, and poor Sammy, when he came into the family, still may get a good night kiss on the forehead from me, because I will tell them how grateful I am for them. When Jacob was a teenager and he was a brat at times, I thought the way to talk to him would be to massage his feet. So I'd go in there, and touch is such an underrated thing, using the power of smell, the power of touch. And I'd say, how was your day? And he'd go, good. Teenage boys grunt. Don't ask for more than that. And I'd go to, I just want you to know how much I love you and how proud I am. And then he might go, Mum, what would you do? And I go, yes. And so,
here I am, sunshine.
I'd put a drop of oils on tissues when I'd pick them up from school and put them in the air vents, put the windows up, they have to breathe. So I'd support them in the car. And so I just play with life in the best way possible. But I do feel oils are a wonderful way because smell is so closely linked to our emotions. And I said at the beginning, the minute you have a thought, it becomes an emotion. You have a feeling. The feeling then becomes a belief. The belief then becomes your behavior, and your behavior become your habits. And that, if we can understand that, we have the power to create better ones. We have the power to create strong ones, and we have the power to break the ones that aren't serving us.
How does it feel for you when you see clients and people you coach like start to get into those habits and those rituals? What's that feeling like for you?
I feel like they're my babies. I feel like it's like watching them grow up, and not in a way that they aren't growing up. I think we underestimate the emotional maturity, the emotional capacity we have as humans. You only have to look at our elders or people that sit there like the Jacquelines, my grandmother, who would be so calm. Yes, dear, penny for your thoughts. They're not at you. They're not teaching you. They're not forcing themselves. And maybe that's something too that I've noticed. I'm part of a beautiful women's group that's all about the crone wisdom, owning that the older I get, maybe as I'm approaching 60, the power of wisdom and life experience. And if don't have to throw it on you, but if you ask me, so happy to share it.
Yeah.
And what have I learnt from it? And sometimes it's the story, the power of women's circles, men's groups, climbing mountains, getting out into nature, walking the beach, walking your dog, just being mindful of what's around you, because it can change in an instant. When Jacob lost his dearest friend, Henry, here on the Sunshine Coast, walking home, after on New Year's Eve, and being hit and killed in a tragic accident, that beautiful soul has taught me that life can be taken in instants. And just remembering that, what have we got? What do we hope to leave? What's our legacy? How do you want to be remembered? Ask your kids, how do you want to be remembered? What would be the greatest thing you've learnt from me? And then when I get a message from my son, just 2 nights ago, you're the reason I do what I do. Or my daughter, there's no one greater I look up to than you. It's not my ego that gets stroked. It's my heart. It's, there were times where I'm sure they've disliked me intensely, felt the same. But I dislike the behavior, or I dislike the tone. Don't dislike them. And so for me, it's very, very beautiful and honouring to know that my clients get the experience. I know what it's like to raise teenagers. I know what it's like to be a mother exhausted. I know what it's like to have a child in hospital. I know what it's like when your husband falls off the pedestal or his own sense of worth. I know what it's like to fall there myself. I just think we are all as broken as we are whole. We're all as bad as we are good. We're all as as weak as we are strong, but we're all so capable of much more. And I think the greatest thing of all is to know that synergistically, just like blends, when you blend or oils together, the power of one oil and the power of another oil doesn't become 2, it becomes 9. I do like to look at humans synergistically as well. That maybe just this conversation you and I have had today, maybe something you and I have just said, one person needed to hear today. That's the power of synergistic effect and outcomes when we come together.
Kim, you've been absolutely amazing, and I'm so glad and lucky to have you sitting here and sharing your wisdom. You're so resilient, tenacious and loving and caring, and everyone who gets to meet you is so lucky because you get to share that and learn from it. So thank you so much for coming in today. You've been amazing and, very inspiring human being.
You do know this, though. I have to end it with me. I have to finish last.
I've got one more question for you.
Okay, well, one last thing I can say to you.
Yeah.
You only see all of that in me because it's in you. We are such beautiful mirror reflections of one another. And I always remind people that if someone's an idiot or you think they're a tosser, it's only because you yourself have been one too. So let's remember that the beauty and grace we see in another is because it's such a reflection of what's in us. So thank you.
Well, that's very nice. My last question is a nice place to land and finish off is just where is Kim Morrison at most peace?
When I got my family around me. I love it when my adult kids come home and I look at us all and I make a meal and I put it on the table and we all sit down and say a little grace, and I look around and I look at Danny and go, #we made that. I'm so happy when I'm with my family. And then moments like this, to be honest, and I get to really reflect. And, it's not often you get to think about your life and your story, and it's through beautiful souls like you that ask questions that make you think. And so maybe it's really nice to ask quality questions to the people you love the most too, because one day that won't be there.
Thank you so much, Kim.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching the show. This podcast is truly a passion project for me and the small but awesome team behind the scenes. We pour our hearts into bringing you these honest and insightful conversations. But I can't tell you how much it helps when you hit that follow or subscribe button. The show gets bigger, which means we can expand the production and we can continue to bring in amazing guests from all walks of life. Please help us to do this thing that we love and hit that follow or subscribe button. We appreciate you being here. Thank you.